today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about how relationships go into emotional bankruptcy. Every unhealed moment, every sharp comment, every little sarcastic remark, every little thing left out of place, every unwashed dish, every unemptied dishwasher, every unlocked door, every uncleaned car, they all build up. I just noticed that when we become very positioned that someone is evil, bad, awful, that when we project everything that we hate on them, it's very hard to give them credit. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're going to talk about the little things that become big things, how emotional debt builds. We keep fighting about the little things, dishes, tone, who's more tired, but it always feels way bigger than what we're fighting about. What's really going on? And listener, I hear this. The classic is they fight over, is the cap off the toothpaste and who did it? Who left the toilet seat up? Well, there's only one candidate for that usually. These are things that seem small, but come up big. Or another way I like to talk to my clients about this is, have you ever had the experience when you go emotionally from 0 to 60, but the thing seems like it's a 0 to 10? If that's happening, you probably have actually a combination of things. You probably have a little a little residual emotion from your childhood that might be coming up. But the big thing that's coming up is you're going into emotional debt. And so when you see that cap off the toothpaste, or you see the toilet seat up, or you see that your stuff has been moved out of your area and you go from 0 to 60, is because there's a lot of pent-up emotion that has built up, a lot of pent-up negative emotion. And negative emotion takes relationships into emotional debt. And let's talk a little about emotional debt. We talk about it a lot here on Rich in Relationship. Think of your marriage, your relationship, as a bank account. And you know what? It's a high interest, high CD yield bank account when it's in the positive. And it also has an emotional overdraft protection that you've given each other. But when it goes into overdraft protection, it's high interest also. When you're going from 0 to 60, your relationship has slipped into emotional overdraft protection. What that means is you're moving forward, hoping it changes, hoping that it's different, but it doesn't. And every time they do some little thing that tells you that it isn't different, the interest in that emotional overdraft protection comes out and you go, "Ugh." The little things aren't small. They become big. Every unhealed moment, every sharp comment, every little sarcastic remark, every little thing left out of place, every unwashed dish, every unemptied dishwasher, every unlocked door, every uncleaned car, they all build up. And what they are, really, are indications that you're not paying attention to each other. You're not paying attention to each other's need. There's unacknowledged effort, omission of what should be given, and death by 1,000 cuts. And those 1,000 cuts do what? They pull down the balance in your emotional bank. And when you get into overdraft protection, sometimes couples go deep in overdraft protection. The reactions start becoming bigger and bigger, or they ignore each other. You know, some people, when they're having trouble with their finances, they go into la la land. They pretend like everything's okay. They ignore the stacked up bills in their household, and they just keep moving on as if everything's all right. Like some people, like I'm talking about real money now, but emotionally we do that too. Sometimes emotionally we just start ignoring the calls for payment. That's really what all this is. They're calls for payment. We just ignore them. We just keep going on. You know what? I'm still eating. There's still a roof over my head. They're not foreclosing on the house yet. We're still living together. We're still taking care of the kids. We haven't got divorced yet. And over time, the relationship not only stops feeling safe, it stops feeling like a relationship. You start feeling like roommates, not even college roommates. You start feeling like roommates who are cohabitating. And then one day you wake up and you go, who is this person? Or maybe they do it. Brad and Gwen, pseudonyms for clients, plural. There is no story that I tell that is one client in particular or one couple in particular. They're true stories. They're stories of true dynamics that I've worked with, people that I've met. They're more like composites. So Brad and Gwen, they thought they were having a rough season. Work was intense. Their 1-year-old never slept. And every day felt kind of like triage. They keep dropping the balls, picking them up, or a better metaphor is when you're in that state, the plates, you're trying to keep the plate spinning and one of them slows down, you go running over there to fix it. And then, oh my God, that other plate, right? That's kind of what triage is about. Triage is just like you're slapping Band-Aids on the wounds just to keep from bleeding out. And they weren't fighting over big things, just constant little triggers that led to bickering, or not even bickering, right? Sometimes Brad would make some remark about Gwen's cooking, and Gwen would go, huh? And they just go off into their corners. And then Gwen, who had a memory like longer than eternity, Brad would say, hey, what's for dinner? And Gwen would say, oh, you don't like my cooking anyway. Let's go out. Brad would hear that and go, okay, we'll order out. We'll order out pizza. They just avoid it. Constant little digs, little barbs. They fought about whose turn it was to cook, whose turn it was to empty the dishwasher, who needed to take the garbage out, who needed to change the diapers, who forgot to buy the diapers, who stayed up scrolling when they both needed sleep, who was busy working when they should have been spending time together, who was watching the game when they could have been taking care of the kids, who wasn't taking care of the kid and the kid was crying. They fought about everything. And they didn't realize that those little irritations were balance alerts. They didn't realize it was their unconscious mind saying, our relationship is in debt. We've stopped accumulating good feelings, and now we're just building up bad feelings, negative feelings. They just didn't know it. In fact, what they decided was, Brad decided Gwen was a biatch, and Gwen decided that Brad was an a-hole, to use the vernacular. And they just decided that the other one was a jerk. It was all their fault. They didn't see it as emotional debt. They saw it as they are broken. And online, you see couples like this all the time. You see reels and memes about keeping score and walking on eggshells and death by 1,000 cuts, like I just mentioned. What looks like pettiness is usually just emotional debt collecting interest. So what do you do about this? A listener writes, we're both so tired of fighting. How do we stop this cycle without pretending everything's fine? And actually, some new clients recently came on, they said, we're both so tired of not talking to each other and feeling so angry all the time. We haven't talked to each other in weeks. Well, the antidote to the emotional debt isn't avoiding conflict, and it certainly isn't engaging in destructive conflict. The answer or the antidote to emotional debt isn't going out and learning the 5 love languages and just doing nice things, though that helps, right? I'm not going to knock the 5 love languages. But if you're engaging in behaviors that are pulling away from your emotional balance, and the 5 love languages, in case you're not familiar with them, every person has a primary love language. We all have 5 love languages is the theory. It's touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gift giving, and quality time. Those are the 5 love languages. We all have one that we lean into primarily, and circumstantially it might change. If we're grieving, we might need a different love language than under normal circumstances. And love language is a way that we fill up our love tank, or that you can build up the love bank that we talk about here. But if you're so radically in debt, when you start talking love languages to each other, what happens is the other person now hears that as a negative, even if you're trying to be positive. What do you mean you're proud of me? Are you saying I haven't done enough in the past and all of a sudden you like what I'm doing? Right? You got to deal with the root cause. You got to deal with the negatives. You got to recognize it, own it, take it apart before the love languages will really work. But love languages are good. I'm not knocking them. Part of building up the emotional account is deposits like love languages, but part of it is noticing that maybe what's happened is you have some unconscious scammers that are making withdrawals. Maybe you have projected so much of a painful situation from your childhood or from college or whatever on your partner that no matter what they say, you're so defended, you're so withdrawn, you're so sure that they are the evil emperor, that they are Darth Vader, that they are whoever. You're sure that they're bad, that nothing they do that's good is received as good. You see this in politics all the time. Well, very recently, the President of the United States drove home a peace agreement in the Middle East, and people who don't like him aggressively acknowledge that he did this, but they don't want to give him credit for it because he's just so bad. And so, without making a judgment of whether the president is good or bad, I just noticed that when we become very positioned that someone is evil, bad, awful, that when we project everything that we hate on them, it's very hard to give them credit. Let's face it, right? Good or bad. If you brought peace to the Middle East, that's some accomplishment because not many people have done that. Well, we'll see if it's lasting. We'll see what comes out of it. But credit where credit's due. So part of this is taking apart a negative story that you've created about your partner. But that can't happen until you both desist from negativity. And so the first step, really, if you want to start filling the emotional love bank again, is you need to recognize your part in the negative pattern and make a decision that you will no longer do it no matter what they say or do, no matter what. And part of why this is so important is when we get into this space of you're wrong and I'm right and you're messing everything up and I can't believe you did that and there's no win in that position. No win for you. Forget about them. We can't be our true and highest self if we are living in recrimination of another person, whether it be your partner or a political figure or the person across the street, your boss, whatever. We can't win when we are sure that we're being victimized by the evil that's on the other side. And here's the deal. The only way you can recognize evil, the only way you can recognize anything is if you've got it in you. Not that you are acting on it, but it's in there. Usually when we hate someone so vehemently, it's because they have a quality we really don't like in ourselves. And rather than deal with our stuff, we deal with their stuff in their face. And maybe that's why politics is so polarized right now. Instead of attempting to see the perspective of the other person, instead of attempting to understand the values that drive them, instead of attempting to understand their worldview and what it is they want, we say, you're different, you're evil, and I hate you. And when we do that in our marriage, as long as we take that stance, it doesn't matter how many positives they do, because it's all manipulation. It's all coercion. And so the first step is we got to own our part. We got to get that there may be a lot wrong with them, but they're not our problem. We can't control them. We can't change them. We can change ourselves, though. We can accept that we may be some evil ass mofos, but we're not acting on it today. And we can start acting on our highest values. So the first step is to make a decision. I'm going to be the best person I can, no matter what they do. And when we come from that place, we're much more likely to enter into creative, constructive conflict. than when we come from the other place. When we come from the other place, we've decided that they are evil and we are good, and there's no win. Can't win if the other guy's just evil, right? No way you win. So when Brad and Gwen came to us, they were in this space. Brad was convinced that Gwen was destroying their lives with her hardcore schedule. And Gwen was convinced that Brad was destroying their lives with his hardcore schedule. They had different kinds of hardcore schedules. Brad was a nurse. Gwen was a high-end, traveling often manager of others, doing presentations in other locations all the time. And they had a child. Imagine that. So imagine the stress they were under. And they had decided that the other one was the problem. And so when they came to us, or when they started to own, you know what, I get it. Like, I need to make choices that are better for me. And basically, Brad was able to negotiate a better schedule at the hospital he worked in. He said, hey, I have kids. I just can't work the schedule the way it is right now. I need to be home for my kids at certain times. And you're either going to work with me on this, or I'm going to need to find another job, right? I love working here. And you know what? It turned out that they loved Brad. He was awesome, and they accommodated him. And Gwen similarly said, I'm going to need to be able to work virtually more. Yeah, I can still do some traveling, but I'm going to have to cut it back because my kids and my family need me. And guess what? They gave it to her. Working together, they made a decision that the other person wasn't the problem. Working together, they made a decision that they needed to do things to be more purposeful and intentional for themselves. They were exhausted, but also purposeful and intentional for their child and for each other. First, they did our communications program, where they learned how to manage their own triggers, and they learned how to communicate safely and hear each other and validate each other's feelings and understand and show respect. And then once they got to that place, they went even deeper. They did our mental and emotional release program, where they could unwind some of the bad programming that they had gotten from their childhood, some of the trauma that they'd picked up growing up in the households that they had grown up in. And they had grown up in some pretty fierce households. And they were able to lead lives individually and separately that were much less stressful. And they started building up that love bank. Hey, by the way, they tried the 5 love languages before they came here to Rich in Relationship, and it just didn't work. But after they did this work, they could do the 5 love languages and build up that love bank, because they were not only in a place where they were giving the language that the other person wanted, but the other person was in a place where they could receive that language. With guidance, they started to identify the withdrawals and stop making them, dismissive tones, forgetting gratitude, defensive reactions. They started adding small deposits, check-ins, words of affirmation, like I appreciate you statements, noticing each other's efforts, doing things for each other, giving each other gifts. And they started repairing the relationship and building that love bank up in time. Emotional debt does not mean that you're broken, or more importantly, that the other person is broken, or maybe it means that you're both broken, but not irreparably. Truthfully, we're all broken. And once we recognize our brokenness that was handed down to us by our parents, that was handed down to them by their parents, back to Adam and Eve, or the first protozoa, or whatever story of the start of mankind you buy into, the fact is, whatever it was less than perfect. And we've all inherited it. Once you embrace that and see the strong, good qualities that you have in addition to the brokenness, we can start to let go of guilt and shame and embrace that we're whole and complete and seek fulfillment as individuals and as a couple. When you treat yourself and your relationship like the most valuable accounts you own, it'll start paying dividends. What do I mean by yourself, by the way? We need to feed into ourselves just like we need to feed into the relationship. We need to charge our own battery before we try and charge the relationship. A lot of relationships disintegrate when we try and care for everyone in the family, but we're not charging our own battery. And that becomes a withdrawal from the love bank. If you are ready to get your relationship out of emotional overdraft and start building true emotional wealth, join our free community group, The Bridge. There's tools in there to get you started. Huge value. It's free. We'll keep sending you podcast notification. Once a week, we'll send you a podcast notification and a video notification, and you can pick and choose what you want. We won't endlessly drip on you. We'll just keep you in the loop. And if you need some help, I'm here for you. Hey, the next episode is all about, I don't know what's wrong. Early signs of marriage fatigue, right? Marriage fatigue is kind of that experience of being in emotional death. So stay tuned to Richer in Relationship. In the meantime, have the best day, the most awesome day possible, and set your intention for an amazing tomorrow. And thank you.